So hopefully, again, that will be quite useful for you. We are having subtitles on at the bottom just for accessibility. Apologies as well. We're not having some clothes, we're having some titles on the bottom, as you can see. Hopefully that will provide a bit of entertainment as we go through as well. If I can just make sure, if everybody can check you're muted, so we don't get any interference or any sort of feedback. I'm conscious that some people can't hear. If you can you just put, if you can hear me, can you put a thumbs up or an okay in the chat function at the bottom, please? Just so I know that everything's working. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay. So that might be a localized problem. Excellent. Thank you very much. As we go through today, please do use the chat box to put any questions, any comments. I'm quite happy to take those. You can also tweet those comments out if you want to. I'll be monitoring that as we go through the session. It would also be worth bearing in mind that I'm going to use a website called Slido. This is something I've used quite a lot with students, and it essentially lets you ask a question anonymously. It gives you a platform, gives you a way to do that without necessarily putting your name up and out there for the world to see. You can, of course, scan the QR code on screen, or you can go to slido.com, S-L-I-D-O, and enter the code 91296. I will keep coming back to that as we go throughout the session. And again, at the end, I'll pick up any questions that have come through that. One of the advantages with Slido is you can vote on those questions that have already been asked. So you might well find that many of you have the same request, that are interested in looking for the same information. So please do check that first, and then hopefully we'll be able to come up with some common questions that we can get through. If I can't get through everybody's questions at the end, there'll be a way in which you can reach out to me after the session and we can try and work through those. Dylan, I can see you're having some issues hearing. It must be something your end. I think everybody else is okay looking at the feedback. Everything's working my side, so it might just be that something's not quite right at your end. But don't forget, you'll get a recording afterwards, so you will be getting a copy of the audio. Okay, so let's crack on. As I say, quite a lot to get through. The first site I wanted to point you towards is the gov.uk Find an Apprenticeship website. Now, this is really your main starting point. It's probably worth me pointing out that it's a government website, so it does vary in its quality, shall we say. It can occasionally be quite hard to access. You might find that now and again it likes to break. Having said that, it's very accurate, and in theory, every apprenticeship in the country should be advertised on here. Now, one of the things I urge everybody to do, and you'll get a copy of this link, there'll be a link to this on the PowerPoint I'll send you, is go up to the top right here and create an account. That's the first thing to do. You're giving the website your basic information, your name, your contact details, your home address, that kind of thing. It will then send a code to the mobile number that you put in. Now, that code can take up to 3 days to arrive. When you do get it, it's only valid for about 6 hours. Random, I know, but 6 hours. You then need to jump back onto the link, put the code in, and that activates your account. Once you've done that, we get to the search point. So there's lots of different levels of apprenticeship. I know you will almost certainly know this already. Intermediate is typically your entry level, 12 months. There may be GCSE requirements for that, there may not. Advanced is aimed at those students who are about to embark on a level 3, so an A-level or a BTEC course, but it's also aimed at those that have just finished A-levels or BTECs. This is the category with the highest number of vacancies. You've then got your higher, which is for those finishing a level 3 course, and your degree, which is, as it might sound, a degree apprenticeship. So you could search for almost anything. You can see the common things that I'm asked to search for and find. You can search in a number of ways. You can look for a specific employer if you wanted to. You've seen a vacancy advertised elsewhere, you can have a look at that and go for that. Equally, you can do by job title or a little bit of everything. My recommendation is keep it as wide open as possible. The last thing you want to do is miss a really important or really significant vacancy because your keyword isn't right or it's not quite there. Keeping it wide open does mean you're going to be bombarded, but I would rather you see everything and you then filter out what you want. That's maybe where this website isn't particularly good. The filter function isn't that great. So we keep the keyword as all. We go for something broad that describes what you want to do. We use your postcode. So in this case, we'll use mine as an example. Distance, I'm quite mobile, I can drive, so I'll open that wide out, or I'm quite limited, I'm quite restricted. Obviously, the broader you go, the bigger an area, the more vacancies you're going to bring up. So we then run the search, and hopefully you'll see some results. If you don't panic. If you're in year 11, legally, you can't start an apprenticeship until the day after your last exam. Now, obviously this year, that's all up in the air. What I would suggest is that there's going to be some sort of legal element to you preventing you from starting an apprenticeship until the end of June, early July. So we want a vacancy start date, and you'll see it on the adverts here, possible start date. We want that, if you're in year 11, to say end of June, early July. Now, obviously, they're not going to advertise those, 6 months in advance. So at the earliest, February half term next week. From then onwards, we should start seeing vacancies appear. So don't worry if you search and there's nothing there yet. We've got plenty of time, plenty of opportunity to pick things up. So you then have a list of appropriate vacancies. What I would suggest, if you've set up your account and you're logged in, save it. Click on that bell notification, that bell icon there. That then means that every week, every day almost, whenever a new vacancy comes up that meets your search criteria, you're going to get an email. That's the beauty of this website. Let this do the search work for you. Don't worry about logging on every day and checking. When you get your email, that's when you put the time aside. That's when you have a look and see what's out there. So really good, really useful. What we're going to try and cover over the next couple of days in the next few sessions that I'm doing is things like how to apply once you've read the vacancy, if you like the look of it, what to expect once you've completed your application, and what comes after that. So we will be coming back to this site during the rest of the week. You can also see it on a map function, so you get a much better idea of what's available. Now you can alter that if you wanted to. So you can say, I'm just looking for advanced or intermediate. Like I say, for me, I would keep it as wide open as possible. The more that you can see, the better. But you can also have several alerts set up. So I have one for intermediate vacancies near one of my schools, one for advanced, one for high, one for degree. You will then get bombarded by emails. So what I would say, keep it as wide open as possible. Limit it to just the one email. It will be huge, and you will need probably around an hour each week from half term onwards to check and just screen that. But that's your starting point. You're going to see everything there that's relevant to you, that's roughly what you're looking for. There will be some exceptions to that. So you may find that, let's say you put hairdressing or childcare, you're not necessarily going to see, not every vacancy is going to be relevant. Some of them might be a different job, but with a firm that does what you want to do. So business admin is the one that always comes up, but it might be that working in the office of an engineer or managing appointments for hairdressers. That's why I say keep it as wide open as you can. Don't worry about refining it. I'd rather that you get an email with everything on it and you then refine it from there. Okay, so that's one of my main sites. That's something that I always direct every student to. It's incredibly useful. It's very, very relevant. And there's some really good stuff on there. It can be, as we've said, a little bit of a challenge to use. It's not always the easiest. However, it is something that you can use and that will be quite functional, quite accessible for you. So that's your National Apprenticeship Service website. Go back to our slides. So we've got some other options as well, other choices, other things that we can potentially be looking at. Just bear with me a second while we bring that up. Okay, so we've gone through that one. As I say, a little bit ugly and it does break, but don't worry too much about it in the first instance. The main thing is that you're not missing any vacancies. That's what I want to try and avoid. Don't forget your questions. We will jump on that at the end and have a bit of a look. This is one of my other go-to sites, really. Get My First Job, smashing company, really, really good. Particularly if you're looking for the higher and the degree. So if you're in year 12, year 13, beyond that, and you're looking at those higher levels of vacancies, this is a really good site. There's much more to this one. It's a bit more in-depth, a bit more detailed. And again, you can register. All of the sites I'm showing you, bar one or two, allow you to register and they will then do the search for you. What I don't necessarily want is you having to spend hours each week looking for vacancies. These will do that for you. We can then pick up on that and work from there with it. As you can see, there's quite a bit that's been added in the last month or so. Lots of opportunities there to engage, lots of stuff for you to sort of have a look at. Oh, not seeing the slides, everybody. Okay, just bear with me a second. Apologies for this, everyone. You've got to love it, haven't you? Right, let's try again. Let's do... Okay. So hopefully you can all see the Get My First Job website. If we can just put a comment in the chat so that we can see that, everybody. Excellent. Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. So Get My First Job, really, really good. Like all of the ones that I'm going to use, there's a register function. This one's a bit more detailed. It's going to take you longer. Some of the questions are a lot more complicated. What they're trying to do is drill into what exactly are you looking for. It then does make sure that the email that you'll get, which with this site typically is once a week, that email is going to be a lot more detailed, a lot more accurate. You're going to have to spend less time filtering, and it's going to be more about which ones do you want to go for, which are the vacancies that look good. This is employer funded, so the employers advertise on here pay. That does mean you tend to get the bigger companies, the nationals, the multinationals, the chain organisations. Great if that's what you're after, if that's what you're looking for. As you can see there, that's just a snapshot of some of the businesses that are going to offer you opportunities through here. There's some good stuff on here as well about apprenticeships, about what's out there, about what to expect from a vacancy and from an apprenticeship, but I'll show you a couple of other sites for that as well. What I really like about this site is the guide for parents, especially if the world of apprenticeships has changed dramatically since you were looking for that sort of opportunity. If it's not something you're all that familiar with, there's some really good stuff on here just to explain that in a bit more detail. If you're working in a school, if you're a careers leader, again, some good stuff on here. So this is really, really useful. Some great vacancies around at the moment. Again, if we have a bit of a look at what's out there. That's typical, isn't it? You can narrow that down, so you can alter it to just those intermediate or advanced. But as I say, this is really good for the higher and the degree. There's lots of vacancy listings on here usually. There we go. So you'll see some of the larger companies, larger organisations. Some of these we'll come back to because, again, in themselves, they could be quite useful. So Get My First Job, really worth having a look at, getting yourself registered, getting those emails coming through. Now is an ideal time to do it. As I've said, lots of vacancies will be coming out over the next few weeks and months. Some of the larger companies do start earlier in the year, particularly for those advertising higher in degree. So again, if you're year 12 and year 13 and you're thinking about that apprenticeship route, it's probably better to start looking from sort of October half term onwards. Leaving it until May or June is too late. You're going to have missed the bulk of the really good vacancies. So lots and lots of opportunities there for you to think about and have a look at. The only other one I'm going to point you towards is this one, Rate My Apprenticeship. Think of this one as TripAdvisor for apprentices. There are some vacancies on here, as you can see, 530 live jobs right now. But more than that, this website has got a list of top employers. Who are those companies who really look after their apprentices, who have got great progression rates? So at the end of the apprenticeship, you're more likely to either be kept on or offered something with a smaller subsidiary company or supplier. And massively important when you're on that apprenticeship, because of course there's no guarantee that they would keep you at the end. So this really helps with that. This is also very good if you find a company or a vacancy that you really like, but maybe you're not sure. Maybe you feel you want to know a bit more about it before you go for the application. Something we're going to talk about later on in the week is preparing for that interview and knowing as much as you can about the company. This is a way to do that. You can click on that link, and what that will eventually do is take you to some reviews from current apprentices. What was that apprenticeship like? What's the company culture? What's the ethos? What are they looking for? What's the whole recruitment process going to be like? What can you expect? Not every apprenticeship will be represented on here. Some of them will be there many times, but as you can see, 27,000 reviews overall, and that keeps growing. You can, of course, search for a specific company or a type of job, but it will give you a really good idea of what to expect and what did students think about it. Worth bearing in mind, lots of these companies pay this website to be on here, so you're not necessarily going to see the really poor reviews right at the top. Right? There's going to be an element of filtering. There's going to be an element of choosing what you see and what's out there. But there's some really good stuff on there. There's some really worthwhile reviews that give you a proper insight into that company from a perspective that you can relate to, that understands where you're coming from students like you who've been in the same position and have made the same decisions. This is something that we come back to tomorrow when we talk to a panel of apprentices about their experience. And we've got an apprentice joining us on Wednesday for a session looking at a good application as well. So Rate My Apprenticeship, again, sign up. It's all free. It's always free to sign up. I never recommend anybody go through any paywalls or any costed accounts. Free to sign up, free to get your account off and going. Really worth having a look at. I'm just conscious that a couple of people might have missed the slide before. So the website that we looked at before Rate My Apprenticeship was Get My First Job. Like I say, I'll send the presentation out at the end of the session, and that's got all of these links and more on it. So don't worry too much about making any notes or web addresses or anything. You'll get a list of everything at the end. So just to recap very briefly, you've got the Find My Apprenticeship website. It's a gov site, so it's a bit ugly, doesn't always work. However, in theory, every vacancy in the country should be on here. You've got Get My First Job, really good, paid. So some of the results that you get will reflect that. There'll be sponsored companies who are automatically pushed up the list. And you've got Rate My Apprenticeship, TripAdvisor for apprenticeship recruitment, really good. And again, they're all running their own range of events this week. So if you really want to dig into it, Get My First Job and Rate My Apprenticeship tend to profile specific companies. So I know they're doing something this week with PricewaterhouseCoopers, with PwC. Really worth having a look at those 3 sites. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of general. There are, of course, other places. There's Indeed, there's Reed, there's all the usual job websites. I find those quite hard to use to really drill into apprenticeships. I find with these 3, I get most of the vacancies. There are others, there are plenty of others that are around that are there for you to have a look at. What I want to do, I want to show you that one. So Get My First Job we've gone into, we've had a bit of a look at that. Rate My Apprenticeship, we've drilled through that as well. I've put some others here, the ones that I feel are the most useful. That bottom link is a little bit outdated now. It's a pretty accurate reflection of the higher end degree vacancies that come up every year. You tend to find it's the same ones. That link there will take you to a list from February last year. It hasn't been updated since then. They seem to be putting it all on the .gov.uk website, but it will give you a good snapshot of what's out there at that level. You've got the rest of those there that we talked about. There's lots of others. Again, general websites, Future Talent, Big Choice, Indeed, all very, very good to help you find vacancies. I do find the search function on Indeed is quite hard to use and not entirely accurate. You've then got Apprentice Nation, which is a relatively new site sponsored by BT, with lots of guidance on there as to how to apply, what to expect. There's some really good, really sort of student-friendly information on there. It's also worth pointing out that they are running some really good events, webinars over the next few weeks. It's under the heading BT Skills for Tomorrow. So that's BT Skills for Tomorrow. And they're running things like personal branding, how to use LinkedIn to find vacancies, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You've also got companies like White Hat. Now, White Hat has recently changed names. It was in the media last week. They've been bought out by a company run by Tony Blair and his son. They've acquired something like 37 million in venture capital funding. Really good site, and they tend to work with your higher level tech companies, but also your multinationals. So think about companies like Unilever, Nestle, Google, Microsoft. White Hat is the group that will run their recruitment. Worth having a look if you're after that kind of high level company. Really good website. And they also do insight events where they'll present to you about that company. They'll tell you a bit about it. They'll tell you what to expect, what to look for. So all of those are live links. All of those will get you where you need to be. I'll talk about the apprenticeship training in a second. We will come back to that. You've then got some apps that are quite useful. Debut is one of the newest. You build a profile very much with a work focus. Keep it very separate to your social. And that lets companies come to you. I've had some success with that in the past. I've had a student who was offered a degree apprenticeship with the Government Economic Service based on what he'd put on his profile and the kind of articles and things that he liked or he was clicking on. So very, very good, very easy to set up, very straightforward. Fledglink, again, very good. Again, build a profile online. Think of it as a digital CV. You're then sending that out. Very much an emerging company and growing company. And there will be something coming out through my Eventbrite and YouTube channels, going through Fledglink, setting it up and getting the most from it with Dom from Fledglink. We're going to talk about that. Young Persons UK, Young Professionals UK, very niche website, a company based in Derby. But again, they run a lot of the recruitment campaigns for some of the really large multinational companies. So again, think Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young. They've worked with a lot of those, along with some of the big engineering firms. We then get into your industry specific. So if you're after a job within medical science, within the NHS, and remember, that doesn't just mean patient facing, that could mean logistics, procurement and sales, That could mean accounts. There's a lot of accounts vacancies at the moment and a lot of business admin. They are all on the NHS Jobs website. They're almost certainly going to be on that top link as well, the .gov.uk. But again, this is a much better one. It's a bit harder to drill down and look at what exactly you're looking for, and what sort of vacancy do you want to find. So what I'm going to do is just jump across and we'll have a quick look at that one. So NHS Jobs, really, really good. Worth keeping an eye on, see what you think, see how you feel about it. You can set up a search, again, very easy, very straightforward. To find the apprenticeships, you have to drill down a little bit. So we have to do advanced search, additional filters. And then what you'll find about halfway down, you've got apprenticeship right there. So as long as you've highlighted that, it's going to pull up all the apprenticeship roles for you. As you can see, 33 at the moment. Bearing in mind it's the wrong time of year, but there are others, including entry-level paramedics, lots of stuff within human resources, lots of opportunities there for you to have a look at and see how you feel. If we then go more industry specific, Make UK. Now this is an engineering organisation based in Aston in Birmingham, used to be called EEF. Very much about engineering. So one of the things they do is keep an open list. Now you can register and set up an account here, but they won't necessarily email you every time a new vacancy is added. So this is one of those where you are going to have to log in and have a look. But they've got some really good vacancies. As you can see, this one's very close to me, Ibstock Brick. The pay is pretty good. They do tend to have the higher level, higher paid apprenticeship vacancies. But also they'll have the Jaguar Land Rovers, they'll have your Toyota, your Bentley, your Motorsport. They do a lot of work with them as well. So again, another one, if you're into that very specific side of it, that engineering focus. Last one, and then I'll go back to the PowerPoint. Income, Walsall-based company, a couple of really specialised training centres in Bridgnorth and in Aldridge. However, they will also come to you, so don't be put off by distance. These are good if you're looking at mechanical engineering, in particular, car manufacturing and production. That's their background, that's what they're really famous for. But they've got lots of options on here as well. While we're on the idea of training providers, it's worth having a think about, it's a bit of a cheeky way to do it, but about who are the big providers, who's out there, who's recruiting. We've put here, find apprenticeship training. It's a little bit of a cheeky way to find vacancies, but with an apprenticeship, there's always a bit of training. There is always somebody who either comes to you and talks about what you're doing, or a college or a training centre that you go to, or a university. There's always somebody running the education element. One of the best ways of finding those vacancies is to go direct to that company. So to give you an example, here's your Find an Apprenticeship website. Here's your training. Now, this really is aimed at employers, and this is the link that you have on the PowerPoint. And like I say, it's cheeky because as a student and as an application, seeking an apprenticeship, we wouldn't normally direct you to this. But you can potentially pick out what level of vacancy you're looking for, what area, what industry. Let's say we want creative and design and we want a degree apprenticeship. Apply filters. You're then going to get what vacancies are out there right now. So what training programs, what courses are providers running for employers? So I might think, actually, that's exactly what I'm after. I want to be a broadcaster. So I get a good idea of, okay, how long am I going to train for? Am I going to get a degree level qualification? What sort of stuff does that mean? Does that job mean? You can then use your own postcode. So again, let's use me. And you'll start to see who provides the degree level vacancies. If we then drill down into that a little bit more, you've got some examples. What do employers think about it? So if you're going there for your training, what does the employer, what does the industry think? But also you can think, right, I'm going to reach out to that training provider. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to tell them who I am and what I'm looking for. And I'm going to ask if they have anything. You're almost working around the government website and around the employer, because you never know whether or not a company would approach somebody like that and say, we're looking to recruit a degree apprentice. That organisation might then have a list of students who are doing a course with them full time, particularly as it's a university. And they may well say, well, here are our year 3 media students. Have a look at this list, see how you feel. Maybe you'll recruit one of those. If the company does, they don't then need to pay to go on that national website. So that's a cost, an expense that they can save. So it's in the company's interest to take a student on that list. We need to get you on those lists. It is a cheeky way to do it. And you may find you get a bit of pushback from the training provider, who they may say, we haven't got anything, keep an eye on the government website, or we don't normally have contact direct with candidates. We're more the middleman. Absolutely fine, move on to the next one. There's usually more than one training provider. The thing to bear in mind, as a provider, they don't necessarily get any sort of fee or income unless they place you in a job. So if you're making contact and they're taking you, they're going to be fairly confident before they take you that they can place you in an apprenticeship. So I hope that makes sense. It is a kind of side way to do it, and it takes a lot of courage on your part to contact a provider and sell yourself, which is what you're going to do. You know, this is me, this is what I can do. Here's my CV, here's my cover letter. Help me out, work with me to get that vacancy. That takes a lot. But if you can do that, the potential is huge. Because again, if they're saying to the employer, we've met this candidate, they're really good, they're really strong, that's going to help. That's going to get you where you need to be. So hopefully that makes sense. You've got some specialist providers. You've got some really good websites that are going to be really useful, that are going to really help. NHS we've talked about, Make UK we've talked about. And there's a specialist industry specific site for everything. eFinancial's a really good jobs board. It takes a bit of work to find the apprenticeships within finance and the financial services, but it's worth having a look at. The Grocer, again, all things hospitality. I see a lot of students who like the idea of working in food and the food industry. The Grocer is really good, both for catering and hospitality, but also for food production. That's a particularly large sector close to where I live, within sort of Staffordshire. It's something that a lot of students don't necessarily think about, but it is out there. There's vacancies there. If IT and software design development is more your thing, TP Degrees is a good one. And there's many, many others. The key thing is, if you're after a very specific sector, if you know what you want to go into, get some advice. Reach out to me, reach out to your careers leader in school. Just give us a shout. I'm more than happy to guide you to where the vacancies are, where the websites are. So those are some of your best sites. I did want to give you others as well. So here's a brief sort of rundown, but again, you'll get this link, you'll get these slides. Like I say, there's stuff out there for every sector. It just takes a bit of research. You know, if you can find a handful of providers who do what you want to do at any level, that's worth looking at. And that's something I would say, that if you're, say, sixth form and you think, I want a degree apprenticeship, don't get fixed on the degree side of it, because for a lot of companies, they would rather recruit you as an advanced apprentice. That's an 18-month-long interview process, which is quite cheap for them. You know, they're paying you a relatively low wage, if I'm honest, but they can chuck absolutely all kinds of work at you in that time and see how you get on. If they're impressed, if you're working hard, if you've got the right ethic, they may come back to you and say, look, this is really working out. We'd like to offer you a higher apprenticeship, or how do you feel about heading to uni? One of the students you'll hear from in tomorrow's session works for Santander. She went in at level 3 advanced, having got 2 A's and a B at A level, so she did well. She took a sideways move onto a level 3 apprenticeship that was with the right company. It wasn't necessarily what she wanted, but at the end of the apprenticeship, they've offered to send her to Nottingham University, a Russell Group uni, to do maths and data science. Not something she ever thought she would go into, but something that's really worked out for her just by taking a slightly different entry-level apprenticeship. And I can't stress that enough. Don't necessarily get fixed on, I want X, so I'm only looking for X. Spread it out. Let's look at Y and Z as well. Don't forget your questions. Lots of opportunities there to ask me anything that you want. We've then briefly talked about training providers. Like I gave you that example with Birmingham City, there are others. White Hat we've mentioned. Kaplan is one of the biggest training providers in the UK for financial services. So if that's an element you want to go into, it might be worth reaching out to Kaplan through their website, find out who their local representative is, get in touch, see if they can help. It's also worth going direct to the company. As careers advisors, we have quite a lot of contact with organisations like this. I know I certainly do with Moog, Marston's and JLR. And they are always saying, if a student has the courage to knock on the door, whether that's virtually through an email or physically, hand me their CV, I will do everything I can to help them. Now, that might mean I can't offer them anything directly, but I might have a supplier who can, or I might have a subsidiary office who can. Collins is a great example of that. Big factory on the Stafford Road, just going out of Wolverhampton towards Stafford, the A449, used to be called Lucas Aerospace. Massive factory, and if a student has the courage to walk through that enormous front door, they're quite happy to do everything they can to help you, and they work with an enormous number of logistics, finance, tooling and small-scale engineering firms. Huge range of people. And don't underestimate that. If there is a particular sector that you want, find out who's the biggest employer, who's the award-winning employer, target that employer, who's the local if travel and region is an issue for you. So that's kind of all I wanted to pass on really at this point. There's quite a bit there. I'm conscious we've whipped through a fair bit, but with the delayed start, with some of the issues that we've had along the way, that I've had along the way, I apologise. I want to make sure that we cover any questions and whatnot that you might have. So I'm very quickly going to jump on that on another screen. Let's just see if you've got anything. If there is anything that you want to ask, now is probably the time to stick that in the chat box if I haven't already covered it. As I say, I'm happy to take anything. We've had a couple of questions about sort of sport and sport specific. There is a few worth looking at. If you were to look at something like careers in sport, it's just careers-in-sport. It's usually the first one that comes up on a Google search. That's a real specialist jobs board. There's all sorts of stuff on there as well about whether you're sports science, sports performance, sports coaching, media, business, talent management. Lots of stuff there for you to have a look at, have a think about. There's also one for careers in football, which again is very, very good. There's quite a bit on there if football specifically is what you're after. It doesn't look like there's anything else through Slido, so that's absolutely fine. I'm hoping that's worked for everyone and that's really helped. I will get this recording and this slide set out to you with all of the relevant links and useful information on there. I'll also send you an evaluation form just to see, is this what you were looking for? Is this what you were expecting? Hopefully it's touched on everything that you wanted. Don't forget our events later on this week. As I say, tomorrow is Apprenticeship Experience. Wednesday, we have What Makes a Good Application. We're going to be doing that with Izzy, one of our apprentices from Unilever, or past apprentice. She's just finished a programme. We've also then got a session on Thursday about assessment centres. That's the one, if I'm honest, I'm really looking forward to. The company that are delivering that run assessment centres on behalf of large organisations. So they're really going to give us an insight into what to expect and how to prepare. And all of that comes after you've submitted your initial application. If you do have questions that we've not covered, if there is anything you want to know, all of my contacts are at the top there. You've got an email at the bottom as well. I think that brings us to an end. Like I say, happy National Apprenticeship Week. Have a look at what's out there. If you feel overwhelmed, reach out, ask for some help. We can target where to look and just come back either to me or to your careers leader in school. Come and ask that question. As I say, I'm quite happy to work with you. I'm quite happy to guide you and give you a bit of advice. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your evening and enjoy your week. Thank you. Bye-bye.